Good afternoon. I trust everyone had a great lunch. Wonderful. First afternoon session for this year's technology conference is Data Governance Roadmap for ODOT. Our presenter today is Ian Kidner. Ian is the GIS manager for the Ohio Department of Transportation. He focuses on delivering technology solutions to improve workflows, agency efficiency, and customer value. Success for his teams is defined through adoption of process-oriented strategies by enabling continuous improvement. Ian has undergraduate degrees in sociology, GIS, and a master's in information technology management. For data governance roadmap for ODOT, Ian Kidner.
All right, is this working? It is, great. Well, I think we get more people trickling in from lunch. Thank you very much for coming back. I think that's a good thing. I know data governance is a fun topic that everybody is really fired up about to hear. We want to talk data right after eating, and so I'll try to keep you alive, or awake, I should say. But there's some good things. Before we get into it, I do want to just thank the IT partners, everybody who, Charles and Missy and everybody who put this together. The second year this happened, and it's just a great opportunity to get together, talk about what we're doing, see what other people are innovating, and how we can make ODOT a better place. So thank you again for all the volunteers. Can we thank everybody? So, over the last couple years, if you've been at ODOT, and I know a lot of you have, you've heard about data governance in some capacity. A few years ago, we did a survey. A lot of you were probably involved with that. And we were asking different business owners and different people what they thought about where we were. And so we learned a lot from that. And then last year we had a smaller session about what type of advancements we had made. And this year we're going to really show you where we've come from. And we've done quite a bit in the last year, and we have a lot left to go. And so it's a good time. Like Charles was saying, this is a great time at ODOT. There's a lot of innovation happening, and I think this is going to be a big key to where we go in the future. So right now, I need you to get your phones out, because we're going to do one of those polls. I need you to participate here, all right? Try to keep you awake after lunch. So we started the actual project in April of this year. And as the project team got together, one of our first questions that we really had to tackle, even though we've been kind of thinking about this for a couple years, was what is data governance? And I know I've given you wonderful options here, and these are only the answers that could possibly be data governance, but what do you guys think this is data governance? It could be, yeah. Is it working? Are people texting, or is it not working? You can't see it? Oh. Well, let's call it out then. Oh, there we go. We got somebody. Yeah. Oh, this is interesting. I did not think it was going to go this way.
Can you read off the text link, Ohio DOT?
Yeah, it's Ohio DOT 01. Text that to 22333, and then A, B, C, or D. Well, it looks like the simplest answer is kind of coming back. It's how you govern data, right? But that doesn't really tell me anything about what that actually is. Data governance is how you govern data. Okay. So as we started to dive into this project, that's one question that became very clear that even across the project team, we had a different idea of what that could be. So we're going to go to another question right now. And, you know, we do things at ODOT for a certain reason. We're not just doing stuff to do stuff. So, So why might data governance be helpful for us? Why should we do this as an organization? Are there any other reasons that people think of why we should do this for ODOT? You can just call them out, yell them out. These are it. Improved it. Save time? Change management, okay. Really? It's not fun? Nobody else thinks this is a fun thing? Come on. All right. Pretty close there with improved data quality and data-driven decision making, which I think is a pretty good component of both of these. Oh, they're neck and neck. Okay, well, it's good to see where people are at with this. But these are all questions that as we implement a program like this, we really have to clarify. Because I bet if we had conversations at these tables or we just had, you know, a more in-depth dialogue, we'd discover a lot of different thoughts and ideas about what is data governance. So when we start thinking about not only what data governance is or why it might be important to us, let's think about some examples today. Because I think that's one of the most concrete problems that people have is they can't put their finger quite on it and quite what it means for ODOT. So as we've been working through this project, we've asked around and we've talked to people in the districts and different offices, and we've come up with some really telling examples of why it's important here. And so this first one, in this case, we have an incomplete permit. So we had a construction project that was occurring, and there was some waterway work that needed to get done beforehand. And it was incomplete for some reason. And so that caused a change order. $400,000 change order because of an incomplete permit. Now, why is that data governance? Somebody could argue that was just somebody who didn't do their job or they screwed up. But maybe they didn't have a complete permit because the information wasn't accessible or it wasn't accessible at the right time. Or maybe the person who was supposed to fill it out, there was something happened and there was no oversight to making sure that it was actually complete on time. It could be any number of things, but it sounds like that permit is a piece of information, and for whatever reason, that critical piece of information impacted that project and it cost ODOT an extra $400,000. So that's something to note. Another example, another type of change order. In this case, it was a paving change order that we found an example of. So this is called a ready to pave. So there's these projects where our county workforces will go out in advance of a capital construction project, and they will do a variety of things because it's cheaper and more cost effective for our workforces to do it versus contracting it out. And again, in this case, that ready-to-pave work was missed. It did not happen. The construction company showed up to do their job, but they couldn't do it because that prep work wasn't complete. And so we had to issue a change order to the tune of $200,000. So again, you could argue, well, maybe it was just somebody not doing their job. So somebody missed the mark on that. But why did they miss the mark? Were they too busy? Did they not have the right information at the right time? It could have been any number of things, but again, it was probably, like you guys were alluding to in that survey, they made a decision somewhere along the line about what to do and when to do it. And maybe they had poor information around that. Now, another example is one that I'm very, very familiar with. And we have this process, or this problem, I should say, between the structures management system and the road inventory system. And due to a number of factors that include both contradictory regulation requirements and some legacy stuff and just how things are integrated, or maybe the lack of integration at times, we have to do a reconciliation between those two systems every year so we can do certain things that we need to do as an agency. It costs us $500,000 in labor every year to sync that. That's a lot of money. And you think about that, that's every year. And again, I mean, to me, that's a very, very evident data governance issue. It's two systems whose jobs are to store data and work together and achieve our mission. And we're spending a lot of money on fixing that problem. And I'm not a math, whiz or anything here, but I look at that, I add the 1, carry the 3, and do a couple things there, and that's over $1 million, right? In those 3 examples. And we have this big, the Red Line initiative right now, where we're trying to find cost saving. That's $1 million. That last one is every year. So until we fix that, over 4 years, that's $2 million. That's a lot of money. So this is real stuff, and this is real reasons why data governance is important. It's not just some behind-the-scenes things that we need to think about. So moving forward, as we look at those data-driven decisions, it's going to grow. Charles talked about this morning how we have all these new things coming and these big programs coming. And I think as we try to make more of these data-driven decisions, it's going to become exponential. And a lot of you know these types of things. We have the asset management program. In the last, was it John? Was it 3 years since 2016? We've collected close to almost 700,000 new inspections and inventory records across these different assets. That's amazing. That's a huge amount of information that we didn't have 3 years ago that we can now use for data-driven decision making. We can now invest more strategically in our transportation infrastructure. And that, like it says there, requires a high degree of quality information and condition and different things. John McAdam is working on the TISMO strategy. How do we optimize real-time traffic flows to respond to incidents, events, and different situations that are occurring? That's going to require a ton of information coming in, again, as Charles mentioned this morning. And likewise, Drive Ohio, smart mobility. Again, it's a common theme we're hearing over and over and over again, and that's going to be a huge amount of information. And I only put these 3 up here, but when you factor in the construction and all the planning and engineering data, even finance, and all those different parts of ODOT, we're talking about an incredible amount of information that we're moving towards. And the big thing is that the future requires this integration. I'm not a planner, I'm not an engineer, but I can bet that as our driving patterns and the general public change, that's going to change the way we need to manage the infrastructure from an asset management perspective. How can we become predictive about that type of stuff? We're going to need to figure out ways to get the information from TISMO over to TAM so that the asset management program can understand this, and back and forth and likewise. And doing that's not necessarily an easy thing, because each program is focused on what they're doing, and they're really focused on that. We want to play well together, but at the end of the day, they're going to really focus on their strategies. So what are these numbers? I know a couple people from technical services have seen a few of these numbers. So 35,000 is the average number of decisions an adult makes on a daily basis. That's everything. And you might not realize it. That's your conscious and subconscious decisions. That's when I get up in the morning, am I putting my left foot in the pants first or the right pants? Am I going here? Am I going there? Am I getting, the chicken, or I'm getting the meatloaf? What am I deciding for lunch? All those decisions. All those different things add up across the day. It takes a little bit of your attention, it takes a little bit of your energy, it takes a little bit of your effort. So what's 200? Researchers have found that in a given day, out of those 35,000 decisions that you have available to you, 200 are the good or difficult, challenging decisions that you can make. Those are the ones that you can really focus on and put a ton of your effort into. And that's not 200 in your 8 hours of working at your job. That's 200 across your entire 24 hours. And we all have lives outside of ODOT. We're worried about our families. We're worried about our cars breaking down. We're worried about what decisions we got to make in the future. We're trying to plan vacations. We're doing all these different things. So as an agency, we're trying to become more efficient. We're trying to make better decisions. If we're not setting up our environment so that our employees can maximize those 200 decisions, we are failing at becoming an efficient organization. If they have to spend some of those 200 decisions pulling data from a system and then questioning, is this quality information? Is this the right information? If they have to spend any of that, we are not being efficient. And that's not going to take us to the next level of that integration that we need to do as an agency. So what's 87% then? So Gartner, and a lot of people might have heard, Gartner is a company that does a lot of studies on business, technology, and different industries. And it was either last year or the year before, they did a study that found that 87% of organizations are immature in their analytic capabilities. 87%. If I was operating a company, that tells me I have a massive competitive edge if I just invest in those things, those simple things you need to do to to support that analytics program. That's huge. And while we are not, a competitive company in that sense, we're not, we're not a for-profit organization. I think we need to think more like a business as we get more efficient, and we're trying to be better. And we really are, I think, in a way competitive. We're competing with ourselves. How do we deliver better service to the general public? Because we do. We have a huge impact in the state of Ohio. So what does Gartner recommend that you can do in these cases to, how can you become part of that 13% instead of that 87%? Well, you could develop a holistic analytics strategy with a clear vision. We're starting to hear some of that type of stuff, right? Okay, that sounds okay. Create a flexible structure that exploits analytic resources and enables ongoing training. So we got a structure, analytic resources, and training. We need to support people in different ways. Okay, I got it. We need to create an analytics platform that can support a broad range of uses. TAM, TISMO, Drive Ohio, construction, engineering, finance. Wow, that's a broad range of uses that we have. And finally, here's a no shocker, implement data governance. And I just copied and pasted those 4 statements from their report. These are the things you want to do if you want to become, more efficient from an analytics perspective. Experian did another study about planned projects around data, data management projects. And I would argue that most of those categories kind of fall within the data governance category. And you can see, I did the math there. You can see what the jump was between 2017 and 2018 on the left-hand side. Data governance, 14% more of organizations are starting to recognize that value. The one thing that's interesting is towards the top, you got 22% increase and 16% increase on analytics and integration. So that tells me a lot of companies and organizations are saying, okay, we need to have better analytics. But if that previous study said 87% of them are immature in those strategies and those things to tie it together, I think you're getting ahead of yourself here. Because you can build these wonderful dashboards, you can build these wonderful reports and different things, but if the information going into it is inconsistent, of poor quality, or whatever that case is, you're still going to make a poor decision. So I think that's why data governance is an important thing to think about. So what are our obstacles? There's always obstacles to things. What's that? The culture, that could be one, yeah. And this is one of them, legacy systems. You got legacy systems, I got legacy systems, we all have legacy systems, and people get worried about that when they say, oh, it's a legacy system, we got to deal with it. It's not a big deal. It's just something that's going to change. And, is that a technology or a process issue to overcome? It's probably a little bit of both. It's not that, but it's not a big obstacle in my mind. We have silos. ODOT is working better more and more and more across the business units. But as I mentioned earlier, at the end of the day, I'm in technical services. I'm going to help different people as much as I can, but I'm going to focus in on those things that technical services is going to focus on, just like everybody else, all those other business units. And so when we think about what needs to happen for data governance, it's unrealistic to expect it just to happen because we think it's a good idea. We really need some type of focus to help bridge the gap between those different business silos. And so it's a technical issue, it's a process issue, it's a people issue too. And then change. Change is absolutely an obstacle. Who's responsible for what? What are the needs? People struggle with change. But I look at all of these obstacles and we're ODOT. This is not a big deal for us. We can take care of this. We just got to figure out our path forward and do it. So, earlier we talked about, or I asked you guys what you thought data governance was from those different options. And, we have a vendor who's helping us process a ton of information around this. We're not the first people to do data governance. So they've gone out and they have done research. They've interviewed other organizations, public and private, to help us figure out what are the best components of data governance that we can push into our way of doing it. And again, we needed to clear up what is data governance for us. And we came up with this wonderful definition of what data governance is. And I really think this is what it is. Because if we choose not to do data governance, we're doing the same thing that we're doing now. And we have inefficient ways of doing business. We're going to lose that money over and over and over again. And if we choose to do data governance, it means change. It means we need to think differently. It means we have to operate differently. We have to step outside of our comfort zone a little bit. But again, I'm not really worried about this because there's a ton of very smart, engaged, and motivated people in this room and across the organization who are ready to take on these things because everybody is really driven to serve Ohio better. So again, what is data governance? And we came up with this definition. And I think this is a very crystal clear definition of what data governance is. It establishes the guidelines and rules of engagement for business and management activities of enterprise data. It's how you manage your data, right? Formalizes data lifecycle interactions between people, processes, and technologies to support positive outcomes. It's that data-driven decision making that we want to do. So how are we going to do this? We know what it is. Now we need a good strategy for moving forward. So we've worked together with the project team to build out a framework that just steps us through this. And it starts at the top with the organizational business drivers. It's the why we do what we do. And there's any number of these. We have critical success factors that have data components. It's how we measure our performance as an agency. We have regulatory compliance needs. We have a strategic plan that says this is how we're going to move forward. And that integration across the agency that needs to happen. And then, of course, we have other agencies that we have to partner with. We're going to take all those business drivers and we're going to funnel them down to that governance layer. And this tells us how are we going to achieve those drivers. We're going to define program objectives, and then we're going to do strategic planning, saying this is what we're going to do now, this one next, and that one after that. And then we're going to figure out the policy, the operating, the standards, all those different things that we're going to need to implement it. Then we're going to measure it. Are we successful at one, or do we need to improve something? And then the change management. Has anybody actually heard of organizational change management? A few people? Okay, so there's a few people. Change management's a big deal with these types of things because you don't want to change the way somebody does their job, walk up to them and hand them, hey, here's a bunch of change, and then walk away and say, good luck. That's a recipe for failure. Change management is a process where you walk up to somebody and you say, hey, I need you to change the way you're doing something. Here it is. I'm going to help you through those phases. And when we're talking about changing roles and responsibilities, accountability, how we're standardizing things and different things, that's going to be a huge, huge need for this project. And then from there, we funnel down to the day-to-day, the data lifecycle management. This is the stuff that we're already doing, but we're going to put a structure around it that's consistent and effective. This is the people going out in the field collecting information. These are the DBAs in the back end administering the database. These are the people building reports so people can analyze information. This is how we're going to create those cross-platform integrations. But the one thing that's going to happen is our needs are going to change. Those drivers are going to change at the top, and the experience of how we're going to need to do that is also going to need to change. And so we need to have a continuous improvement process so that those processes can be realigned and also the technology as our needs change. And the main thing that's missing from this picture is the people, because the people make this stuff happen at ODOT, and that's how it always is. At the top, we have the strategic level, our executives who say, yeah, this is a good idea for ODOT. There's a lot of value here, and we're going to champion this and support this in the right ways. And then we have the tactical. We're going to lean on a lot of existing groups out there and create some new opportunities as well, new groups. And these groups are going to help kind of push data governance into the fabric of ODOT so it just becomes seamless with what we're doing. Then the implement. That's where just what it is. We're going to implement these things through our project management strategies, through our SDLCs, through all those different things. And then again, like I said, for change management, we're going to support this. We're not going to just drop stuff in people's laps. We're going to support them so they're successful. So that's our framework. I'm not sure if you've ever thought about data governance, but I hope that this picture paints a really clear understanding of what data governance is, and at least what it's going to be for ODOT. And if it's not clear, come talk to me so that we can make this clear, because part of this success is making sure that everybody understands what we're trying to achieve. So far in the project, we started off in April of this year, and I guess it might be kind of hard to see. There's a couple line items that are bolded a little bit. Those are the ones that we've currently been working on. We created that data governance framework. The details of that framework aren't fully fleshed out yet, but we're working on that now to help figure out what are the processes, what are the interactions, what are those standards that need to be developed. We're working on that change management plan so we can be successful. We're looking at the resource structure. We've proposed the creation of a chief data officer position and some supporting roles to make sure that there is the proper support to work across all these different business units. Because you guys all have day jobs. It can't be your job to make sure these things happen. You might help with it, but that's what these roles will be. They're going to make sure these things happen. And then we're talking about creating a data governance committee. So this is very similar to the Technology Council. We're thinking about 10 to 12 individuals who will be from different areas of the organization, different levels of the organization. A rolling cycle, so people will be on it for a duration and roll off. And there's some voting tiers and non-voting tiers to make sure that we're getting all the right information, but we're having a centralized group who's going to make those decisions. This group is going to be key for this success also. They're going to be deciding, well, what should these standards be? If we do have a change, what does that look like? And if there's stuff coming up from the bottom, they're going to help negotiate that and up and down. So change management, I talked about that briefly. We're using something called ProSci, which some people here have been trained in. And it's a proven methodology that's used across many organizations. And it's a pretty simple methodology when you break it down. Its success comes through that consistent application. And it basically starts with generating awareness about, well, what is data governance? And then you create that desire. Well, why should we do data governance? I don't know. We could probably save some money if we did some data governance. You create some knowledge. Okay, this is how we're going to do data governance. And then we enable that ability. Here you go. Here are your tools. And then the reinforcement, again, the support piece for us. And we're working and we're building out this strategy. We're looking at different audience levels, and it's going to be, I'm pretty excited for what's going to happen with this. The one thing that wasn't on that list was this return on investment. And we asked the project team to come up with this, because when we started to kick off this project, we had a lot of pushback about, well, why should we invest money in this? And again, I think ODOT needs to start thinking and acting more like a business. What's the return on investment on our activities? And so we came up with this white paper, which frankly, I think can be used for just about anything we do at ODOT. It's a step-by-step guide for, I'm implementing a new application. Here's what I'm changing or I'm creating. How do I derive quantified value from either actions or qualitative things, and then you can model it out over the course of a few years. You can do that with any number of things using this. So if you're interested in seeing this, please send me an email. I'm happy to share it. Again, we're going to start piloting this on some asset management activities that have data governance related components, so we can show this value in a more concrete manner over time. I mentioned process we got to change things. And we've worked with a lot of people in the last year or two on where we've gotten so far, and there's a lot of excited people. And they're frustrated because we're not at this optimized, fully functional, everything's not working as it should be approach. And that's okay, because these types of changes, these type of programs take time. And I think that's important to remember, that we have to step through these things. We have to build our way up to that optimized continual improvement methodology. And if we all just stick with it, we'll be just fine. So here we are. We started the project in April. We did a bunch of research on best practices. We developed that framework I shared, and we're still building that out. We're starting to align some strategic plans, and now we're seeking the adoption of this chief data officer and some positions. And then in 2020, we're going to start implementing that. We're going to start with that. We're going to get the data governance committee together. We're going to start talking about those standards and policies and things that we're going to need. Towards the end of this project, this is a pretty short project, only a couple years, we're actually going to do an assessment of our technology systems, of our legacy systems, and we're going to figure out what needs to change in those regards. And then we'll plan for future projects to actually deploy that technology and start beginning those upgrades. So that's pretty much where we are with data governance. I do want to point out that our project team is a really small team, and this is an incredible amount of work of putting this stuff together. And I just want to take time to recognize, I'm not sure if is Dean here? I know Dan McGeary, can you wave? And Priyanka Singh, there's Dean in the back. Can we give them a round of applause? They've done a phenomenal job on this. They keep this ship moving, we would not be where we are without these individuals. And I also have to recognize Drew Williams, who has championed this project for a couple years now, and he's done a wonderful job. So Drew, thank you very much. So I don't have 45 minutes of things to talk about. That's about it. I can take questions if you have any questions. I'm going to try to answer those.
I have a comment.
Yeah.
It's good to understand this in the context of an overall robust enterprise architecture. It encompasses business organizations, processes, applications, technology, and data.
Yeah. Yeah.
The organizational change management, is that ITERIS that's doing that?
So the question is, she's wondering who's leading the organizational change management. And the vendor team there's a prime and some subs. The prime actually has a change management specialist on their team who's helping develop that. ITERIS is focusing on they're the data governance specialists.
So are they going to come up with some kind of template that we could also use for organizational change management on the project? Or is it geared solely for this?
A little bit of both. So we have a primary document that's starting to say this is how you would apply ADCAR in ways, and we're asking them to build out a plan that says these are the specific actions that you want to take at different audiences for different milestones of the project. We should get together later and we can talk about that. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. So there is, Missy, do you know, and I know we paid for the training for a number of us, and there's some company that does that. And so you can look up some of their things and just say, I'm going to do change management and you do this. There's probably some licensing if you actually are going to like educate people on it, that type of thing, or try to certify. Yeah, I don't know if you have anything else.
ODOT actually enlisted
Yeah.
this process with the ODOT initiative, and then the project management staff along with tech services were trained in this methodology as well. And I have the books on my desk. I'd like to take a look at it.
Yeah. Any others? All right, well, thank you very much.